This is On the Line, and I'm Eric Felton. After the murder of U.S. Ambassador Christopher Stevens in Benghazi, Libya, will Western governments respond by disengaging, retreating, or focusing only on the extirpation of radical elements? That's the question Ethan Chorin asked in a New York Times op-ed. Joining us from our New York studios to answer that question is Ethan Chorin. He's author of a new book on the Libyan revolution and the last days of Moammar Gadhafi, Exit the Colonel. Ethan Chorin, welcome and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Now, you were actually in Benghazi, Libya, when Christopher Stevens was killed. What's your sense of that event and what it says about where Libya is right now?
Well, yes, I unfortunately was there with some colleagues on the 10th and the 11th and part of the 12th, and you know, it's a great tragedy. I had the pleasure of knowing Ambassador Stevens not incredibly well, but enough to be extraordinarily impressed with him and his work in Libya. I think that clearly the attack had on the U.S. compound there has and continues to have a great impact on the execution of Libyan politics currently, as well as obviously it's entered into the U.S. presidential debates and the question of whether the Arab Spring. So there's a tremendous this event has had and will have continue to have a great impact. I think it's also one has to take a bit of a step back and look at the progression of events in Libya over the last year and a half since the beginning of the revolution, from a bit of a higher altitude, and ask what other trends can you see here? And I think there are a lot of positive developments in Libya. You have a series of transitions from unelected to elected transitional governments. Within Libya, there has been progress in terms of building civil society to some degree. There are tremendous challenges. There's a lot of weaponry throughout the country. There's still a tremendous amount of inter-militia conflict and a very unstable political situation. So we'll have to see how things play out.
How is that unstable political situation going to be fought out in Libya? Is there sort of an ongoing revolution still going? How is the government there going to deal with the radical elements?
Well, Libya is not naturally a good soil for extremist elements. I think that we're still talking about a very small minority of the population there, particularly in comparison to other places in the Middle East where there is a broader and longer, deeper sort of ideological currents there. At the same time, you have the more there's a power vacuum, the longer this continues, the more chance that spoilers will come in, and that could be in the form of funds from abroad. The Gulf states some of them have played an active role in supporting some of the Islamist groups. One has a very real possibility for some of the funds that were sequestered or taken out of the country by the former regime to be used to foment problems. I think that's going to be a continued issue, and you've got a tremendous amount of weaponry. Against that whole backdrop, you have a government that's struggling to put itself together, to create a constitution, to recreate new institutions in the country. This is going to take a long time. It's not going to take. I don't think anybody had illusions that this was going to happen overnight, and yet at the same time, when faced with reality, people are wish it would happen faster. People want to get back to their daily lives.
How much is the legacy of Gaddafi and how he was gotten rid of affecting the shape of Libya going forward?
Gaddafi, this was not a kind regime. There were, the downfall of Gaddafi had its roots in large degree in the persecution of various groups, opposition elements, particularly in the eastern part of the country, and those scars are very deep. There was a massacre in 1996, Abu Sulaim, in which more than 1,200 people were killed, most of them from the east. In the late 90s, the eastern part of the country was effectively under siege. It's a culture in which people are very suspicious of one another, which informants were pervasive. Those kinds of attitudes come into play when you're trying to create coalitions and get things done. And I think it's going to take some time for Libyans to develop a bit of a more trusting and open attitude in some cases.
Is there a role for the West to help Libyans overcome the legacy of Gaddafi? You write that the gravest mistake would be for the United States to write off Libya as an irredeemable terrorist haven. What sort of approach should the U.S., should the West in general, have to Libya at this point?
Well, I think Libya is extraordinarily important for U.S. foreign policy generally, in the Middle East in particular, because this was the one area or opportunity during the Arab Spring in which U.S. basically made a very strong commitment to intervene and to help the rebels unseat the previous regime. If we are perceived to be short-term allies and retreat, I think this will have a tremendous impact on U.S. influence on the region broadly speaking. So Libya is very important, and I think one problem that you're seeing right now is that the Libyans are perceived to have, first of all, it's a rich country, and there are lots of expectations that the Libyans will go and procure all sorts of technical assistance on their own, while the United States is a bit reluctant, given budgetary concerns, to go in and offer services either against the wishes of the Libyan government or on a gratis basis. So the Libyans need to articulate their needs more forcefully, I think, and the United States would do very well to try to understand and to influence the best they can the Libyan government to accept technical assistance, aid of kinds for which they don't have the administrative structures to take care of at the moment.
Now, of course, the intervention in Libya wasn't just the U.S., but European powers as well. In the aftermath, is the U.S. and Europe on the same page with regard to Libya? Are they working in a way that's cooperative and productive?
I think the U.S. and certainly its European allies are on the same page with respect to Libya. It's in everyone's interest, economically, politically, otherwise, for there to be a stable, prosperous Libya. There were some differences during the sanction era in terms of what speed the rapprochement would take place and who would come in when. But I think there's quite a fair bit of agreement right now, particularly in terms of assistance. I think the Europeans have recently allocated increased funds for Libyan assistance, and one hopes the U.S. will follow.
We only have a few seconds left, but what's your sense of what you're going to be looking for to get a sense of where Libya is headed next? What are you watching in the country?
Well, at the moment you have a series of flashpoints. There's in the news recently there have been reports of heavy shelling and civilian casualties, and in Bani Walid there's the Bani Walid Misrata conflict, which has been threatens to overrun into other spill out into a broader conflict. You've got some border disputes. You've got the issue of disarmament, integration of militias. Security is number one. It is the number one issue in Libya at the moment. So that's something that the new government, Prime Minister select Ali Zaidan is going to have to has got a huge challenge on his hands in that respect.
Oh, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. But Ethan Chorin, author of a new book on the Libyan revolution and the last days of Moammar Gadhafi, Exit the Colonel. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Before we go, I'd like to invite you to send us your questions or comments. You can reach us through our website at voanews.com/ontheline. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you'll join us again next week for On the Line.